Hi, welcome to Mary Walter Radio. I am Mary Walter. James will probably be here shortly. He said he was going to make a grand entrance, so I'm not sure what that means. I'm so glad you're joining me this evening. Every Thursday evening, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be here sometimes with James, sometimes without. Every now and then we will have a guest to join us. Please, if you have not done so, please subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it so much. It's slowly growing, which is great. And we would also like you, if you like the podcast, if you like what you see, please just give us give me a thumbs up. That would be wonderful too. So I'm going to do a little something different today. Usually in the beginning of the show, I do like the first 15 minutes. I find news stories that you probably have not heard of. And I like to get them out there because I think they're important. A lot of them have to do with the Durham investigation, have to do with Michael Sussman, where if you're not watching Newsmax or Fox, you're really not hearing about it. ABC, NBC, CBS, the usual culprits are not reporting on it. They're giving zero time to it. So these are things that, I think we should be informed from both sides. And if you're more liberal leaning than these are things that you should know. And just like this, why I get up in the morning and I watch Morning Joe, and it's getting more and more insufferable, but I do it because I like to see the stories that are consuming their world, so that when I speak to a friend who is more liberal, at least I understand what they've been consuming media wise, and I think maybe I can understand them a little bit better. So I think it's important. And then we like to do maybe some more long form topics. And then I always try to do something fun. But I think for this show, I want to have a discussion. I would love to have your input on this. I'd love to have your thoughts on this. And if you are on, let me get to Gettr, because I can see Caroline. Carolyn's here. Hey, Carolyn. The Gettr comments do not come over to YouTube. Don't know why, but they don't. And they don't come onto the stream. I don't know why StreamYard doesn't pick them up, but StreamYard does not. So I will do my best to read the comments from the Gettr side, and I will put the comments from the people watching on YouTube. I will put up on the screen. So thank you, everyone, for joining me. Before I get into what I really want to talk about is this issue of this horrible shooting. And but I don't want to talk necessarily about guns because I think there's a deeper problem. I was in a short exchange with someone from England on Twitter, and I can't stand when people from other countries tell us how we should live. Oh, America, you've got a gun problem. Shut up. I hate that. You don't understand the culture. Our culture is different than your culture, right? The reason we have the Second Amendment, I said to him, I said, the reason we have the Second Amendment is because your country disarmed our country when it was the colonists and then treated them horribly and took their stuff and confiscated belongings and took men and conscribed them into the army, into the British Army. So yeah, that's why we have a Second Amendment. It's your fault. So I just can't stand when they do that. It really, really drives me crazy. But it's, to me, it's not this simple solution of ban all guns. It's not. It's that, first of all, it's never going to happen. Never going to happen. It's just not. And we need to accept that it's not going to happen. We need to accept that there's no such thing as an assault rifle. But anyway, we'll get into that. I'll get into that more coming up. I have a super, super, super interesting graph for you. And I did some research and I found some things from John Lott, who is the president of the Crime Prevention, what is he? The Crime Prevention, I'll make sure I get it right, Research Center, Crime Prevention Research Center. So I got some interesting statistics from John, because not everything is as it appears and as the media would have you believe it is. So I think that that's important that we talk about that. Just so people are trying to blame the police for taking an hour. Yeah, we're going to talk about that as well. It doesn't make any sense because everybody sits back and we're all guilty of it, right? We're all guilty of it. All my friends on Facebook who were political, political professors, they knew everything about politics, tell you all, they know everything. Suddenly went silent once Joe Biden started being Joe Biden, right? Then once they got what they voted for, same thing. They've all become medical experts when it comes to abortion. Now they're all police experts, gun experts, and on and constitutional experts. We're none of those things. You're probably less informed than most people, the ones who scream the loudest, I think. Well, who would want to run into? Yeah, well, We're going to talk about those things, Patrick. So just hang on, because I do want your comments as I go along here, because I want to have a quote unquote discussion, but we have to do it with your comments on YouTube and Gettr. Okay. So you can feel free to do that. I just want to share one quick story with you, and kudos to my husband for finding this. I just want to share this because this is just the lunacy from the left that, and listen, the right does some pretty loony stuff too. It's just that the left seems to have perfected it. At least I think. So the San Francisco School District is dropping the word chief from all job titles out of respect to Native Americans. First of all, I highly doubt any Native Americans complained about this. It's like the former Washington Redskins. Now they're just like the Washington team or some nebula. I don't even know what their name is anymore. But the depiction, their mascot, was drawn by a Native American, honoring, I think it was his father or grandfather, who he said looked like that. And they thought it was a great honor. But white liberal guilt will ruin everything because liberals suck the fun out of everything. I have no idea who this is. Love? Hi, Love. It's in another language, so I don't know. I have no idea what that is. So liberals suck the fun out of everything. And the next time I do this show, I'm going to get my mug. Vince, my former co-host, actually got me a mug for Christmas that said, liberals suck the fun out of everything, Mary Walter. Because I say that all the time, and it's so true. So the San Francisco Unified School District spokesperson, Gentle Blythe, oh dear Lord, told the San Francisco Chronicle the decision was made to stop using the term yesterday. While there are many opinions on the matter, our leadership team agreed that given the Native American members of our community have expressed concerns over the use of the title, we are no longer going to use it. I totally think they're playing with you. Let's see what we can get them to ban next. Like if I could do that, I totally would. I would totally see how crazy I can make them. According to their San Francisco Unified School District's official website, the district employs 13 officials who have the word chief in their titles, including Chief Technology Officer, Chief of Staff, Chief Academic Officer. As of Thursday morning, the titles have not been changed on the website. The school district has 10,000 employees. They've not decided what they're going to replace the word chief with. Maybe everyone should have the same titles, that nobody feels different than anybody else and nobody reports to anyone and everyone's equal and everyone's exactly the same. Because I'm sure officer bothers people because it evokes pictures of cops. I don't know. Maybe that's offensive too. Have you seen the shows, these design shows? Because sometimes late at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, Friends is on every single night on Nick at Night. But I think I've seen every episode about 25 times. Every now and then I'll turn on HGTV and they're looking for a room, the American people moving to Amsterdam or something. And they no longer say master bedroom. Now it's the primary bedroom. I'm so glad we've done that, because that just solves all the problems, doesn't it? Doesn't it? That just solves all the problems. Scott says, hello from Gettr. Hi, Scott. Bone Hearts on Gettr. Have I mentioned that I hate libtards? I know you need to curb your tongue. I hate that word. I really do. I don't like name calling. I just don't. I'm sorry. Caroline, boys have been emasculated, fed Ritalin, and given video games to desensitize them to killing. We're going to get into that coming up. Indian motorcycles, right? Yep, you're going to have to change it. It's like, I don't know if you ever saw the TV show Community, and I have referenced this in the past, but the TV show Community, it was on a couple of years ago. Ken Jeong was in it. What's his name? The Joel McHale was in it. Chevy Chase was in it. It was a cute show, and it's all these people at a community college, and their mascot was deemed offensive, so they decided to come up with a new mascot, and they had a meeting, and everybody put everything in, and everything was offensive to everyone, so they wound up with a person in a suit, just a pure white suit. No other colors, just pure white. It wasn't skin tone or anything. No fingers, no toes, no eyes, no mouth, no nose, no ears, no distinguishing characteristics. And they were just called the human beings, because everything offended everyone so much they couldn't come up with a mascot that people weren't offended at. That's where we are now with this whole, you can't have a chief. I'm surprised you can still get a master's degree. I'm surprised that's still allowed. By changing how we refer to our division heads, we are in no way diminishing the indispensable contributions of our district service Central Service leaders. They reached out, New York Post reached out for an explanation as to what prompted it. Although the word chief traces its origins to the old French word chef, meaning the head of a group. It has become to be closely associated with Native American tribal leaders known as chieftains. So that was just our word for them. That's not what they called themselves, but that's apparently what we called them. And it comes from chef, and we American, I don't know, but it morphed into chieftain, which then got made shorter into chief. In the meantime, in San Francisco, so this is what they tackle. In the meantime, you've got boys in the girls' bathrooms, boys swimming on the girls' swim team. You've got people who are literally defecating on the streets. They pay people. Do you know that if you want to in San Francisco, they will pay you 6 figures to put on a hazmat suit and roam the streets cleaning up human waste on the sidewalks? But thank goodness we got rid of the word chief. Everything's is so much better now. It's unbelievable. Today at the store in a box of Famous Amos cookies, I noticed his picture was missing. A senior citizen there who worked for Frito said Kellogg's now owns it. Oh, okay. I gotta tell you, the Famous Amos cookies, I never thought they were that great anyway. Give me a good Chips Ahoy. If I'm gonna buy a store-bought cookie that's not like one from Costco and really chewy, I could go for a good Chips Ahoy with a glass of milk. I never really got the whole Famous Amos, everybody loved it. I never understood that, Patrick. Didn't get it at all. All right, let's talk about what happened in Texas. Everyone is armchair quarterbacking, okay? So let's just go with what we know. We know that this kid was a loner. How many times do we hear that word loner associated with these shooters? These young men who do very violent things very publicly and take a lot of people down with them. I'm not going to say the shooter's name at all because I refuse to make him famous. So I want his name to just go into the nether world with him. Like, never say it again. So I will not say his name. 18 years old. And he apparently had a penchant for wearing eyeliner. And he got bullied a lot in school because I guess if you go to school with eyeliner on, despite everyone saying that, you know, boys can be boys and girls can be boys and boys can be girls. See, Patrick, that apparently is you still get you bullied. And as far as bullying goes, bullying is terrible. It's a horrible thing. But I got news for you, and I'm not trying to diminish what this kid went through because I think now today you have cyberbullying, which is way worse. Cyberbullying you never get away from it. Like it follows you home. Everybody, I got bullied for certain things, you know, and it's called peer pressure, and you learn how to deal with it because when you get out in the real world, there are bullies in the workplace. I worked with some. I worked with one guy who I told the boss I would not go into I was going to go get a restraining order against him. And I told the boss I will not go in the building when he's there. That's it. I mean, it was such a bully, the things that he did to me. I probably should have sued, and I wouldn't be doing this now. I'd be on an island somewhere. But there are bullies throughout your whole life, and insulating kids and not teaching them how to cope with it, I think is a huge mistake on adults' parts. I really, really do. I think that we're doing our kids a disservice. Yes, he also had a bad lisp as well. Yeah, but at 18 years old, you would think by then the kids would have stopped bullying him for that by the time you're 18. Unless the only thing I can think of, and I'm not saying that this is right, but unless the kid is a quote unquote weirdo, you know, or hasn't learned how to deal with the bullying. Never learned how to deal with it. His mom was dad was nowhere to be found, although he supposedly lived in Uvalde. Dad wasn't in his life. Mom apparently had struggles with addiction. And so she had problems. So he was not in a stable home environment. I think that's another thing. So you've got bullying, you've got cyberbullying. We've got kids who I think aren't being taught how to deal with confrontation or anything along those lines. We're not teaching them that skill. And because we try to insulate them, my generation raising the next generation, we just insulated kids from everything. and we smooth the path so they had nothing bad happen to them. And so they get out into the real world, or they get older in school and they can't deal with adversity. They can't deal with a kid bullying them. Bullying, it sucks. It really does. It makes you feel terrible. But you learn how to deal with it and you learn how to get over it, and that shapes who you become as an adult. But this kid had no one to teach him. Mom was nowhere around. Um, and so he went to go live with his grandparents. Uh, yeah, yes. Hi, John. John is joining us as well. And yeah, you know who my bully was. You absolutely do. Yeah, he knows who it was in this industry. Someone who's very famous or infamous and got another gig in New York City after going to jail, making millions of dollars because, and my life sucks. Mom has drug problems, right? Kids call them bullies. Adults, yes, yes, exactly. I remember a large girl, Cheryl, from third grade class used to say, I don't give a care about people being mean to her. She said that, but she probably did. It hurts. It really, we've all been there. I don't know anyone who hasn't been bullied. And if you haven't been bullied, you were the bully. Somewhere in your life, everybody gets bullied somewhere along the line. Look who decided to join us. Hey!
Hey.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm good. I'm
Okay.
here.
All right. Well, we're talking about the shooting in Texas, and we're talking
Whoa.
about, well, because I don't,
I
everybody,
won't.
the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, we should ban guns. We should ban guns. That'll stop assault rifles. What's an assault rifle? Nobody knows. Everybody who I've asked that to says we should ban assault rifles. I'm like, okay, tell me what an assault rifle is. They can never tell you.
Yeah, people are pretty confused about all that. Yeah. Yeah, they get very confused. I mean, yeah, I think getting the Hi Pat. Patrick. I think yeah, I'm obviously I'm not sure how much you covered on this, but I'm sure some kin of getting the the getting the guns in the wrong people's hands is probably the bigger problem than what the weapons are, because I'm sure that there's plenty of people who have AR-15. I think was the weapon the gentleman had. There's plenty of gun owners who have these weapons who aren't out killing people, who know how to use them in the right places, and they're not they're not hurting anybody. So
The AR though has the same, uses the same bullets, has the same capacity. Uses everything is exactly the same, but it just doesn't look as scary as other wooden stock rifles.
look,
So,
if I
so
were
because
gonna
it doesn't look as scary, everybody goes, "That's an assault weapon because it's scary." And I'm like,
well, a 5-shot 12 gauge shotgun's going to do way more damage than an AR is, and nobody's trying to ban shotguns. I mean, shotguns are incredibly deadly. I mean, they'll
yeah,
take your head right off, blow your chest out of the back of you, and I for home defense, I'd personally way rather have a 5 gauge 12 gauge shotgun than an AR. But I mean, ARs just get the noise because you can put 30 rounds in them. And sure, look, I get it. 30 rounds down range is really going to do a lot of damage. And because you can put that much lead down range in the hands of a capable shooter is very deadly. So I think, of course, the problem is who's getting the guns, and things like loopholes are a problem. But that's not the situation here. I mean, it is maybe the situation here. This knucklehead got a gun and maybe shouldn't have gotten one. But that's he could have had any gun in his hand and done tons of damage. So
it,
again, it's this
yeah.
crazy person getting a gun, not the gun.
And people are saying, "Oh, well, you know what we should do is we should raise the age to 21." Well, first of all, it's been tried before and it's been struck down as unconstitutional. That's number one. Number two, 18-year-olds are drafted into the military and handed guns. Granted, they get training. We allow 18-year-olds to vote. If 18-year-olds aren't capable of being able to own a gun because they might go out and shoot people, we probably shouldn't let them vote either.
Well,
Yeah,
right.
there's such a mixed message, I think, from the left. The left wants me to allow a 6-year-old to decide that she's really a boy, and we should, at 12, we should give her puberty blocking drugs, and that's okay. And she can make that decision, and mom and dad don't know about it. And at the same time, they want me to believe that an 18-year-old can't handle a firearm responsibly.
Oh, there's no shortage of dum dums everywhere here. I mean, there's a lot of people there's no competent, smart, intelligent, sit down, let's have a real conversation going on here at all. Everybody's really worried about their job and their base. Nobody wants to really have a real sit down here and go, hey, we need to hash out some common sense gun laws and some common sense situation here, right? There's no
Hmm.
adults in the room. Am I wrong? Is there really any adults
No,
in the room here? There's not. I mean,
I
I understand that left's putting out a real. You're not wrong, but I mean,
right,
there's no adults in the room here.
right.
Nobody's willing to put their neck out here and go, hey, the right's certainly not willing to go against the NRA and go, hey, I think we need to start closing up some loopholes in some of these crazy states, right? I mean, they're certainly not ready to jump out and get their
Well,
message out there. The NRA stance is still continually, hey, everybody should have a gun everywhere and every state should be open carry all the time. By the way, I'm not against open carry, so I'm not coming out against it. But my point is, they're not willing to come out and say, but
right.
we should close up loopholes in states that have, like, you can buy trash bags full of guns out of the back of trunks.
Right.
So,
Well, there's no
you know,
state that does that. Most states you have to go through an FFL, right?
I'm
So
being
so that's
hyperbolic,
number
but
one.
you get my point. I mean, no
Right. Well,
politician is
criminals,
willing to come out and be the adult in the room, is my point.
but criminals will always find a way to buy guns out of it by the bagful out of the trunk
Of
of a
oh,
car.
of
You and I
course,
won't have guns,
absolutely. That's what
you
criminals
know?
do. My point is, when people sit down and make things so that the right people, the adults, get guns the right way, that's when things become the right way. There's always going to be a black market for anything, drugs, guns, everything on the planet, right? And believe me, the left wants to muddle this up more than anything else. You can't ban guns. They're never going to go away. It's part of our constitutional right. We're not Australia. We're not England. None of this is ever going to go away, right? And the right's got
Hmm.
to remember that not every person on the left wants to ban guns and make all guns disappear. That's never going to happen because we have the guns. So the government's not taking the guns. We just need to make it so that this guy doesn't get the guns.
Right.
This kind of person who clearly, if you looked at him on every kind of sense of the word, I think we all realize should have never have gotten one, right? I mean,
Of course. Well, listen, here's what I'm trying to say. Hindsight's 2020, okay? He didn't have a lot of friends. He had no guidance. He had no family life. And these are the things that we're looking at. I don't necessarily want to say, oh, guns. I think there's so much more that goes into this. It's really not the guns that are the problem. There's a huge
no, he
mental
had
health
other issues.
issue
Yeah,
in this country. He got the guns
true.
legally. He passed the legal background check. This kid got the guns legally.
Yeah,
So
right.
there wasn't a loophole that would have
There's a
prevented him from doing this.
and maybe a loop.
And
Go ahead. No, so your
no, I was
loophole
just
might be the background check, right? Problem that maybe his background is part of the problem, right?
He's
You're
never been
absolutely right.
arrested for anything. He never spent
Right.
any time in a mental institution.
And boy, there's a problem there, right?
Well,
if
we emptied
if
out
this
all the
crazy
mental.
person's out running around.
Well, we emptied all those out in the 60s and
Yep.
70s, remember?
Oh
Because
no,
some
you're
of
not
them were
wrong.
horrible. Some of them were
Yeah,
horrific, but we
true.
just emptied them into the streets. And that's why
No,
you
but
have homeless people because they're supposed to, on their honor, take their meds. Okay, that's not working.
right. Well, just look at LA or any of the big cities right now that have these tragic homeless problems with, people who clearly have, drug problems or
Right.
problems taking their medication that are choosing to live homelessly.
Right.
Okay.
So I don't think when it comes to any of this, the gun, we shouldn't even be talking about the gun. Let's talk about the system. The system failed this kid horribly.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
Ed here, I'm gonna get to your comments in just a second because it goes to a little bit further down the road.
That is
Um,
part of it, by the way. The system failing tragically
the,
for this. Yeah.
and this is with every single one of these shootings. We've seen this. There's been something that has been missed or skipped or a part of the system that we've put in place these laws that we do every single time there's one of these shootings. We put another law in place that somebody doesn't follow. For instance, okay, so this kid shoots, he dropped out of school. He was working at a Wendy's and he had very few people who knew him. The people who knew him, um, if Paul says some people want the voting age lowered to 16, yeah, no. In some communities, I know in Maryland, some of the more liberal cities were allowing them to vote at, I think, 14. We're saying they were
Ah,
going to lower it to 4. Stupid.
yeah.
Um,
Right.
but look at the way the system failed him along the way. So we've got a very,
Yep.
very angry kid for obvious reasons. No dad in the family. Dad's in town, has no involvement in his son's life. How does that make a kid feel? Mom is got drug issues. She can't take care of him. He's foisted off on his grandparents. He goes to live with his grandparents because imagine the home life he has with mom who's on drugs. So he goes to live with his grandparents, who I would assume gave him some kind of stable upbringing, but he had a lot of problems by then. There were reports that one kid who used to know him and then kind of distanced and said, he cut his face. Okay, so there's something wrong with a kid who says, "Oh, it was a cat," and then upon further questioning, finds out no, he did it to himself,
Which
cut
should.
his face,
Oh, right.
right? Which is a huge red flag. But
Huge
let
red
me
flag.
ask
Yeah.
you, okay, red flag. In hindsight, But at the time, if this kid goes home and tells his parents, wow, the weird thing that Joe did, God, he cut his own face. What do you do as a parent? You call the police. They're going to be like, what do you want us to do? What do you do at that point? I don't. There should be something maybe, but there isn't, and so that's where that's what we should be looking at, not the gun.
There's two frustrations with that too, because you're right, because there's nothing in place for that. And I saw a gentleman on Facebook saying that, what we need in schools now are like armed guards and metal detectors. And I'm going, there isn't even a system in place to do something about what you're talking about, right? There isn't. A lot of times in schools now, they're shutting down secondary sports or some of the arts programs. And this guy thinks that they're going to put in a school system like that in a town with 15,000 people, they're going to start putting armed guards. They don't even have a system in place to help a kid like this or have secondary sports. There's never going to be metal detectors and armed guards in a school system like that. Like
actually there are. The high school and the junior high school does have a resource officers in it. The elementary school did not. And
right.
And this kid's grandmother used to work in the school, so he knew there was no resource officer.
A resource officer is
that's what they call them.
Yeah,
my little town,
and my school had that too. By the way, that's a lot different though than what this gentleman is referring to, and that's not metal detectors and armed guards. But you see, again, my point being is though, I mean, this is a lot. What we're talking about is a lot, right? I mean, these are big problems we're starting to tackle, is my point is, like, getting a system in place to be able to address what you're talking about is where I'm getting to. Like this, we need to have a bigger discussion because in America about addressing these problems in schools. It's not just taking away guns. It's more, I'm really trying to help your point here.
Right.
It's so much more than just saying the problem is if you take away guns, all of our problems in America will be solved. Because if this kid didn't have a gun, he would have gotten in his car and drove it through the front of the building, or picked a packed park and drove through the thing, right? Or made a bomb, or stabbed a bunch of kids, or something. If you don't address the whole package, you're not going to solve the problem. And this is what go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and that's what I'm trying to do. So we talk, mental health is definitely, and there's a loop, but there's no resource there. We have to spend money on that. But as far as the schools, you'd be surprised at the number of schools that their resource officer is armed.
Yeah.
The resource officer is an actual police officer who stands in the school and is armed. It is quite common. And the high school and the junior high, the last thing I saw, this may change, but the high school and the junior high in Uvalde did have armed resource officers. The elementary school, this elementary school did not. So right there they failed. And you say they don't have the resources. These schools got millions and millions of dollars, these school systems, for COVID to upgrade all sorts of things. And I believe there was a gun bill that was passed where it put millions of dollars into the schools as well, which is where a lot of schools get the money for metal detectors and for these resource officers armed in the schools. So this school didn't have that. All right. That's number one. Number two, the doors weren't locked. That's such a simple thing.
That is such a simple
thing. The door
thing.
wasn't locked. That's not the gun's fault. That is not the gun's fault. Who didn't lock the door? There should be one door that you come in at the front. That's basic safety now with schools. It's not like when I was in school and mothers came all the time with your lunch and this and that and walk down your class.
In the class and
not like that anymore.
No.
So who didn't lock the door? Right? Had that door been locked, would he have shot through it? Maybe. We don't know. Had there been an armed resource officer, a word I cannot say, in the school, a lot of those kids may be alive. We don't know, and we're spitballing here. But the point is that there were in every single one of these shootings, there's stories like this where this didn't happen, that didn't happen, this was supposed to be done, this was the day that wasn't done. And you wind up with a shooter in a school. So I don't trust our government to put any more rules in place to try to solve this issue because they're not solving anything.
No, well, you hit my beginning point right there. Who's the adult in the room? And there's never adult in the room.
No.
Or these things would have been solved. These things would have been solved in what? 2012, 2008, 2000, right? They haven't solved this problem in years.
Right. The ex-military guy that went to that Texas church, somebody that didn't transfer his mental issues over at discharge. Right, exactly. Remember the military, there's been several shootings. I think there was another one where the military just dropped the ball over his mental health records.
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean they do all that fine training and stuff while you're in, but forget to do stuff when you come out? No.
It's the government. This is
That's
why I don't trust them to
crazy.
solve this problem. He's
No.
right. They had all the money in the world. Here's Ron. It takes a village. They're not your kids. Do we want to go there?
Yeah.
Paul, you can't legislate evil. So now Ed says this. Ed says, if the bad, and we know Ed has served. Remember, Ed was the one Black Hawk Down. Remember?
Yep. Yep.
From last week. Okay. So
Yep.
Ed says, if the bad guy with a gun knows there's a good guy with a gun who is ready for them, they don't go in, period. This kid's grandmother worked in the school. He knew there wasn't an armed resource officer there. He knew that, to Ed's point. Do you remember the guy, the Aurora shooting in the movie theater? Remember that guy who dressed up like the Joker and went into the movie theater, right, and shot it up?
Yep.
He told the cops, he drove past 4 other movie theaters and he chose that one specifically and did his research beforehand because you weren't allowed to carry guns into the theater in that theater in Colorado. He specifically chose a theater where he knew no one would be armed. They're cowards.
Well, nobody wants to be shot at. I mean, let's start there.
Well,
right?
yeah.
He's not wrong.
Right.
Nobody wants to be shot at. I mean,
you know, why not have a big sign? I've seen signs of people saying in front of different schools in other areas of the country, other school districts says, you know, this school has armed staff, you know, enter at your, you know, like that type of thing. You know, shoot at your own risk. This school has armed staff members. They don't go to those places. Ed says in today's society, that's all this talk about bans and raising ages is all BS. There's only one way to combat violence, but in today's society, that it's all considered racist and mean and unfair. Laws don't stop criminals. That's a proven fact. Ed needs a blood pressure pill now. He said, I spent my last 7 years as a child abuse detective. The system doesn't work. It fails children every day. It's sick. Wow. Man, Ed's led an incredible life, dude.
Yeah.
Incredible life of service. 300 million people in the U.S. It seems like a roulette type guessing who might be next, so nobody gets ready. I just want to read some things to you, and then I'm going to share something on the screen. I told him about this earlier, James. I have something, a map. It's really cool. But the highest gun ownership state with the loosest gun laws in the nation is Wyoming. Almost 60%, 59.7% of households have a gun in the state of Wyoming. Wyoming gun laws are the least restrictive in the United States. They do not have a gun homicide problem. They have a rate of only 1.4 per 100,000, which is lower than what you have in Canada, which is more severely gun controlled and only about a third of that nation as a whole. So Wyoming, more guns than any in the households than any other state, and the lowest gun homicide rate. All right. The highest murder rate of any jurisdiction in the U.S. is, take a guess.
I'm going to go with it's got to be New York.
Washington, D.C.
Oh, that was I know you're not going to believe me, but my very first instinct was to say D.C. and I'm like, that can't
always
be.
Go with the first instinct, dude.
Yeah, I thought it couldn't be D.C. Couldn't be possible.
D.C. has a murder rate of 21.8 for every 100,000.
Wow.
More than 20 times that of most European countries. D.C. is a cesspool. And who runs D.C.? Oh, wait, Congress. Right?
Oh, that's funny.
It is. Ed says Wyoming is onto something. We're actually looking at Wyoming, but I don't like the desert, and there's not a lot of mountains in Wyoming. And the mountains they have is Lake Hall National Park, and they won't let you live in them, apparently, in national parks. So DC, the most restrictive gun laws in the country, lowest rates of legal gun ownerships. And
there's probably a lot of guns.
Almost 22 almost 22 deaths for every homicide for every 100,000 people. And I'm willing to bet the majority of the guns owned in Washington, D.C. are illegally owned.
I'll bet you can find an AK or an AR pretty easily in D.C.
So, I'm sorry. Hold on one second. I thought my husband was yelling at me. It's just he just has the show on very loud upstairs, and I just heard somebody yell 22, and it was me.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Nothing like hearing an echo yourself.
I know, like, oh wait, hold. I mean, I thought
Hey,
it was
that's
him, and
me.
I'm like, what? It was me. And DC's 100% Democratic. You're right, Paul. And so is Chicago, and so are all these other wonderful cities. So, okay, the other thing, there is, and I'm going to put the links at the bottom. Super interesting. I highly recommend that you read them and click on the links. I'll do it as soon as we get off the air. There's only going to be 3 links for you though, because I don't not doing a lot. We're doing one topic. John Lott from the Crime Prevention Research Center wrote a piece, and I just took the abstract of it, but you can delve into the numbers if you want to. You can go into this whole thing. It's really complex. Here's what he says. The US is well below the world average in terms of the number of mass public shootings, and the global increase over time has been much bigger than for the United States. This is from 2018. Over the last 18 years, 1998 to 2015, our list contains 2,354 attacks and at least 4,880 shooters outside the United States. 53 attacks, 57 shooters in our country.
Wow.
All right. So that's now, I think that in the last 2 years, I think it's all ramped up again. I think a lot of it has to do with COVID. We can talk about that as well. But we're talking about, it's not the guns. There's something else bigger going on here. We have an entire angry generation and trying to find out why. By our count, the US makes up less than 1.15% of the mass public shooters. 1.15%, 1.49% of their murders, and 2.2% of their attacks. All these are much less than the US's 4.6% share of the world population. Attacks in the US are not only less frequent than other countries, but they are also much less deadly on average. Why? Because there's usually a good guy with a gun who shows up. Out of the 97 countries where we have identified mass public shootings occurring, the United States ranks 64th in the per capita frequency of these attacks and 65th in the murder rate. Not only have these attacks been much more common outside the US's share of these attacks have declined over time. There's been a much bigger increase over time in the number and severity of mass shootings in the rest of the world compared to the US.
Huh.
So now I'm going to share this. Yeah, I'm going to share this. And I'm going to put it on the screen so you can see it really big.
Yeah, let's see this.
So this is mass shootings by country, and it's from World Population Review. It's an interactive map. And if you look in the upper right-hand corner, right under the microphone there, I'm pointing to it.
Yep.
It says show sources, and you can click on that and get the sources for every country on this map. Okay, and you could have a lot of fun with it and figure it out. So, for instance, the U.S. I just have to scroll down just a little tiny bit. The U.S. Total deaths 199. Deaths per 1 million 0.08. Deaths per million for France 0.3.
Wow.
This is 2022. So now deaths in the U.S. it has definitely gone up in the United States. All right, and this is by shootings. Okay. Let's see. Look at this one. Norway, deaths per million 1.88. Remember, the US is 0.08.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to scroll down and you can have fun with the map. I did. There's a whole how different, because countries use different definitions for mass shootings, so it's hard to make a full comparison.
Right.
So, but if you look down here, the average annual death rate per million people from mass shootings for the US, Canada, and Europe from 2009 to 15. Norway, number 1. Serbia, number 2. France, number 3. I think it's illegal to have a gun in France. I'm not 100% sure. Macedonia, number 4. Albania, Slovakia, Switzerland, Finland, Belgium, Czech Republic, United States.
Well, we're 11th. Who knew that? We went to 11.
Who knew number France was 3?
Yeah, who saw that coming?
If you listen to and England, where guns are outlawed, is number 15. So we're number 11 with 0.08. England's 0.02. They're only 4 spots behind us, and guns are illegal. They always talk, we should be like England. We should ban guns. 0.02. England's number 15 for mass shootings. So, it's not always what it seems. Let's see. In addition, a 2018 study ranked the U.S. at 64th in the world in terms of mass shooting rates per capita, and that's what I was just talking about. So, as eye-opening as that study was, they say many statisticians believe the reason the results seem so counterintuitive is that they're incorrect. So they're saying being 64th. So you have to look at, and they use Snopes as a fact checker. Never use Snopes as a fact checker. It's so biased. Never use Snopes.
Right.
But there's difference in how they count, like the definition of a mass shooting. But it's a great map. The whole thing, and there's other things you can click on in that on that website. It's a great website.
Still showing you something's askew in the thought process.
Yeah, not only is something askew, but I think there is some propaganda obviously going on.
Right.
That in order to create a narrative, in order to get a means to an end, which is, we're just going to ban guns, and then because it's an election year, we're going to ban guns, and we're going to go out to our constituents and say, vote to us because we ban guns and Republicans wouldn't. So you should vote for us, and we'll keep you safe.
Right. Yeah. Good job keeping it safe. They're doing a great job of that.
Yeah. Ed says we'll break the top 10 by October if we keep our current pace. Well, let's just not root for that, okay? Top cause for death among adolescents today is actually guns of all things. Here's the thing. They want to ban long guns because they're scary. We don't want to ban assault rifles. The number, almost twice as many people in this country die from handguns than long guns.
Right.
You know why? You have any idea?
Oh, handguns are more concealable.
No. Suicide.
Oh, yeah. Well, that would make sense too. Yeah. Well, yeah, it still makes sense. They're concealable. You hide it. You go someplace. You pull it out, and you blow your brains out. Yeah, it makes sense.
Right. Yeah. So more people die from handguns. What's used in Chicago? What's used in Chicago on any given Saturday to kill? And do you know how many people die in Chicago in a week? Far more than were killed in Uvalde, right?
Right.
But we don't talk about that. Why? Why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk about Philly? We had over 550 murders last year. Why don't we talk about that? We don't talk about it, I think, because it doesn't fit the narrative. Waukesha, black man, black supremacist, hated white people, goes to a white city purposely to run white people down in a parade. That thing was in the news less than 48 hours. Why? Because it couldn't be capitalized for a goal. It couldn't be capitalized for a gain. It didn't fit the narrative. Look at that. Nice hat, James.
Thank you. This was from my Lurk buddy, from a Vietnam Lurk buddy. Wasn't his actual Vietnam hat, but
you're
I still treasure it.
So there's a lot of elements, but what's in Chicago? What's in these inner cities? A lot of young boys who don't have fathers in their home, right? Because it's changed in a generation. When I was growing up, when my husband and I were growing up, we went to the same high school. The first day of deer season, there was no one in school. We grew up in rural New Jersey. All right, you could see the pickup trucks with the shotguns in the back, to go hunting. Right, those guns never got out of those trucks, and came into the school and shot anybody.
No,
they never did that. It's weird.
I have friends who talk about they used to bring like you said, they used to bring their guns to high school, and some of them used to check them in at their principal's office. They would bring them to school and check them in because they would have to hunt when they were done high school, when they were done school.
Yeah.
So they'd bring their guns to school. They would check them in with the principal. They'd be like, here you go. I need these at their school. Be like, okay. Principal would hold them in the office. And then they pick their guns up after school. I feel like things were crazy back in the day. Oh my God, you could do that? They'd be like, yeah, that was not even an issue. It wasn't even some of those small towns, not even a thought. That wasn't even, like you said, or they didn't leave the back of the pickup, but it wasn't even a thing. It was never even, nobody thought twice about it. That, by the way, we're talking until the 80s.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Through the 80s, that wasn't even.
I know.
Not even a
So
concept.
what, so my question, I get back to the same question. What's changed? And I want to go back over here to Gettr because I think it's Carolyn had a point. She said boys have been demasculated, fed Ritalin, and given video games to desensitize them to killing. And I think she's got a point. We have more kids now on antidepressants and other mind drugs, for mental illness than ever before.
No, this is where I
Why? How do we not think that that has something to do here? I'd love to know. And we never see that common thread of how many of these kids, they're all young boys, by the way. Are you telling, if it's the guns, then how come young girls aren't taking the guns and shooting up schools? Why is it only the boys? If it's the guns, if that's the problem, why is it just boys?
my favorite comedian Christina Basinski was just talking about how she has one of her boys is pretty rambunctious, and she said one of the mothers was like, "Oh, I would have him on some drug or something. He's really wild." And she was like, "What? He's a boy. What do you mean he's wild?
Right.
He's a boy. It's what boys do. They run around, they play.
Right.
Like that's what they do. Like
They break stuff.
she,
That's what they
yeah,
do. They're boys.
she was
My
she was
brothers all the time. It was great. I loved having two younger brothers because they were always in trouble. So I looked like the saint in the family. And they just don't think. There's just no thinking that goes on at all up here.
yeah.
Funny story, my one brother had an automatic toothbrush. It was a Bugs Bunny toothbrush, and I'll never forget walking down the hall, and he's sitting one step below the landing, right? So he's on the first step down, and he's sitting there with a toothbrush and a tube of Crest toothpaste, very diligently shampooing my mother's rug. And I said to him, I go, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I don't know." Like, "Why are you doing that?" "I don't know." "You know, mom's going to kill you." "I know." And he kept going. I'm like, "You're going to die. She is going to
No.
beat you." He's like, "I know." So of course I went downstairs and told her what he was doing, and he got beat. I mean, like, just like,
Dum da dum dum.
um,
Oh man.
yeah, not many guns in China. Yes, because they don't have any guns in China. The populace isn't allowed any guns in China, and that's what we're going to be. We're only the military has guns, then they can come and rip you out of your apartments if
Well,
you don't want to quarantine and that kind of thing. It'll be great. Yeah.
no, don't exaggerate. I'm sure there's maybe how many? There's a billion people in China. I'm betting there's 50,000 farmers in China that have guns.
Maybe. 50,000?
50,000, 52, 55.
Yeah,
Don't quote me on the
yeah.
number. I'm just saying. I'm sure they applied at a military barracks somewhere and they're on a farm and they have to have it to protect the herd. But I'm sure it's a real ordeal to get a gun in
Yeah,
China.
and the
Right?
government doesn't know. They drug kids. They drug kids because parents are too lazy to be a parent. That's so true. It's hard. Listen, being a parent's not easy. So I think that part of that goes into that. Now, one other thing I wanted to share with you. There is a piece here, and I'm gonna put it up on the web page, right below here in the comments. And it's from an organization called Project 21. Project 21 is a Black leadership project. And they have an interesting piece about gun control myths. And they talk about a recent gunfight in Sacramento, which I didn't even hear about. And this is from the early May 4th of this year. So I didn't even hear about that. 6 people died. And they said the reason you didn't hear about it is because the reason was gang violence. One of the shooters was recently released early from prison. He had been jailed for the felonious assault of his girlfriend, and he was released against the recommendations of the parole board. He was previously convicted on gun charges and he also got a settlement from the state for what he called poor treatment while behind bars. So he sues the state because they didn't treat him well behind bars. And he wins.
Good
And this
stuff.
is part of the problem too.
Yeah,
So this author Craig Lewis, who is a member of this Project 21, he says it's not. I'm not going to go over all of it with you. You can read more of it. Hit the link below. I'll put it up there. He said it's a violence problem, not just guns, which is what we're talking about. We have a very violent generation. You're seeing girls now getting in these fights where they're just beating the hell out of each other. You never had that when I was a kid. Girls are starting to become more violent. What?
Get on TikTok or YouTube. Those videos are very popular.
I know, but it's weird that never happened when I was a kid. That when I was coming up, you never saw girls fighting.
Not nearly the degree you see now, yeah.
So you've got more violent girls. Again, I'm going to go back to no fathers in the home. There's no father figure. You need a father figure. Here's what this gentleman says. He said, Only recent generations have concluded that violence is an acceptable way to address the myriad of issues confronting them. The firearm is not the cause of this. In fact, it is not even the weapon of choice. Most crimes involve other kinds of weapons or none at all. Guns are no more the cause of this violence than cars are the cause of drunk driving.
See, and it's funny.
Um,
It's funny. You said father figure in the home, and I'm not
mhm.
saying that's not a factor, but maybe morals.
Right.
Maybe just some
But
morals.
But I think having two parents in a home especially is much better. But if you're in a single parent home in the inner city and you've got, four brothers or sisters from different fathers, mom doesn't care,
Yeah,
she's just
yeah. The
living
bad
off the
the bad
government.
home life. Yeah, the bad home life is is
Yeah.
part of the problem. No morals and a bad home life leads to
Now, are there
if you have
some
no core morality and a bad home life,
right,
there's a dilemma there. Because I've known some people come from bad home lives and have some form of core values. Whether it comes from a spirituality or whatever the core, they have whatever their situations leading to have core values, they can end up okay. But if you've got nothing, the well is dry.
yeah, and I think that's a sense of hopelessness. And Mike
Yeah, the
here
Sentinel
says,
was right. Maybe they have a spiritual thing from being a part of a team sport or the military or the, like an RTC thing or a music situation. That something that's guiding them, leading them somewhere right. Usually, you can
right.
hold
But as
on,
Mike
but
says, I think there is also, as we become a more secular nation, I think we've become a more violent nation.
yeah,
And I know you're not a religious person, but I
like I said,
do
if you're
think
not at least grounded to something else, if that at least is keeping you, if you belong to a basketball team with a really well grounded coach and he's, this morality figure for you that can keep you grounded. But I do understand your point. You got to be grounded
right,
to something if it's not Christianity or some
right,
spiritual device. Yeah,
right. But I do think there is a connection with not having this higher power, this
yeah,
higher
higher power. Yes,
authority.
yep,
Um, He
something
also says
grounded.
gun laws are not a crime deterrent. A 2020 study done as part of the Rand Corporation's Gun Policy in America initiative found that there is zero evidence, and there's a link to that study, that gun control laws have any effect on violence in general or gun violence specifically. He also talks about soft on crime policing, the cause of the rising crime. Absolutely. I mean, it's insane what you're seeing.
Oh,
Here in New Jersey, you had 3,000 kids come on the train to a shore town, and they were told to bring their own liquor, bring their own weed, whoever advertised this. And it wound up ending with flashbang grenades and smoke and a helicopter over the beach because they were running over. It started out as a fun
psychotic.
time, but they had no intention of paying to get on the beach. They were running through the streets of this oceanfront community, running through the streets, trampling, private property and everything else. There was dumpsters and dumpsters full of garbage that everybody had to pick up on their own, and they've got two more planned. And this is we we never would have done that when we were kids. That just never would have happened. But
Never would have thought you could get
five
away with that.
people were arrested. Five out of 3,000. You want to talk about soft on crime? Hunter Biden lied on his federal gun form. Got the gun that he got, threw it in a dumpster. He should have been in jail.
Oh God, yeah.
He should have been in jail just for that. And Joe Biden's up there talking about the problems and the loopholes. And we're like, your son wasn't prosecuted for not one, but two gun crimes. And so you want to talk to me about loopholes and you want to talk to me about what I should be allowed to own while your son commits not one, but two gun crimes. And we're supposed to all act like it didn't happen. But when you
Yep.
have prosecutors who just let these people out of jail, don't prosecute them, and they go out and then they kill somebody, we're all supposed to be shocked. When there's no consequence, when you're never held accountable for your actions, then you're going to do whatever you want. There was a reporter in LA. Did you see this? There's a reporter in LA. She's standing there on the street giving a report, and a guy walks behind her around the corner. He's got a hoodie on because they wear hoodies year round. They're obviously always cold. Hoodie on. And he turns, faces the camera, and points a gun at it like this. Doesn't break stride, turns around and keeps walking right behind her. He points the gun at the news crew and keeps going. They're trying to find him. Nothing's going to happen to him, so what's the point?
It's madness.
Yep.
It is absolute madness. I the
Yep.
things that people are have the ability to get away with. I hear in some of the major cities now, because I have friends who work in a lot of retail music stores, right? And they're like, if you live in a major city, you may as well just walk in a music store now and just rob it, because there's
Yep.
like
Yeah.
no cop is going to come and do anything about it. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. Let me
By the
see.
way, I'm not. I have no plans to go to a major music store in a major city and steal anything. I'm just saying. My point is like, it's insane that there's just no policing. Like, what homeless people do to cops in major cities, and the cops just walk away. Like I
Yep.
hear comedians talk about. I listen to a lot of comedian podcasts, and they talk about how like it's no more fun in L.A. to like or New York, and so to walk between some of the to walk between some of the well, not New York as much, but L.A. especially to go between some
Hmm.
of these clubs, especially
Yeah.
LA, because it's
Yeah.
just brutal. I mean, the streets are just
Right.
brutal. I'm
But
like,
nobody cares, and they keep electing the same people over and over again.
yeah,
To our point earlier, Ron, I remember my old song, "But God couldn't run the school bus." No, they wouldn't let God on. They wouldn't let any God on. You can learn about sex, drugs, and war, but there ain't no talk about God. Very true. And Paul brought this up. Didn't New Jersey just pass a law not to jail anyone under $500 bail? So I looked it up, and yeah, cops will no
what?
longer jail people with warrants less than $500. So it means they can't make arrests for some bench warrants if the
Wow,
bail is, yeah, less warrants less than $500.
huh?
But this is why people do what they do. If you're a criminal, you're going to go shopping at, Tiffany's for your girlfriend because you're not going to get arrested. Smash the window, walk on in, pick what you want. There you go. And they're selling it. They were talking about it today. Somebody was on television talking about these sites have to crack down on allowing these criminals to sell this stuff on their sites. Like, dude, how about stopping them from stealing it in the first place? How about we start there?
Right, might be a good one.
So check out this link to the story. California shooting shatters gun control myths. And there's a link to this Project 21. And he also talks about, he says gun control is racist. And in a way, he's really right. Because, and you can read what he says there about why it's racist. He said, "We're often told that young black and brown men are disproportionately impacted by gun violence, but it is rarely noted that young black and brown men are disproportionately the ones pulling the trigger. The sad fact is that people who seek to victimize others, black, white, Latin, Asian, etc., tend to go after people who look like them." So when illegals are released into a community, where do they go? They go and they live in an area that's poor with people who speak the same language, right? In an area that's probably populated by a lot of other illegals. So when these people in those areas are victimized, they're being victimized by their own people, right?
That's if you pull the FBI statistics, you could. We've done this year after year.
Yeah.
Uh, white on white crime, black on black crime, and are
Hmm.
all pretty much even keel because we all kill each other statistically.
Right.
Same.
So, my last thing that I wanted to say just very quickly. First of all, I will be on Sean Spicer's show on Newsmax tomorrow between 6:30 and 7, doing a half hour with someone else because I won the quiz last week. So I'm defending my title tomorrow. So 6:30 to 7. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I was very excited that I won. Yeah, New Jersey's going the same way as California. Doing large amounts, they must not know what limit is. Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to say is all these people are like, it's ridiculous to put a cop in a school. You know what?
No,
We protect our banks, the money in banks with guns. We protect jewelry stores with guns. We protect large tech companies with armed guards. We protect a lot of businesses with armed guards. And we're at a radio station that had an armed guard because we had so many psychos. Thank you, New Jersey.
yeah, we had one
I
here.
You had one there too? You had an armed guard or a
Oh no,
psycho?
no, no. We had a psycho here,
Oh yeah,
not
well
an armed
that's every
guard.
radio station.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we had a police officer came in every single night and sat with me during my show every
That's
night.
so nice.
Um,
Wish we had that.
we protect our politicians with guns, right? We protect our athletes. We protect our entertainers. We protect the Kardashians, the national treasure that they are, with armed guards, right? With guns. So if you to say that can't put one in a school, I think is just ridiculous. I think that's you're saying, okay, Chuck Schumer is more valuable than a child.
Yeah,
I would beg to differ on that.
correct.
Um, one other thing is, all these politicians calling, Hillary Clinton, we should get rid of guns. Why? There's no reason why we do. We need a ban. I said, and I tweeted back at her, not that she read it and it's not really her. I tweeted back, I'm like, okay, you go first. You get rid of all your armed security. So if that's the way we really want to go in this country, where we're going to get rid of all guns, we're going to be like England, we're going to get rid of all guns. Yeah, abortion clinics with armed guns, right, armed guards, right. But if we're going to do that, okay, I'm with you. But I will only go for the populace being disarmed when when the Capitol Police no longer have guns, when there are no guns protecting Nancy Pelosi, the president, anybody else. We are all equal. Everyone gets the same amount of protection. You want me to rely on the police? No offense. I think police are great, but they can't be everywhere. It took an hour for those cops to get to that school. An hour.
Let me tell you, I spent a lot of time watching Ukraine war footage. The next footage I'm going to watch is the de-arming of the population. That'll be some of the greatest war footage you have ever seen in your life. There will be no de-arming of the population. But I do appreciate your point, because that wasn't your point at all. But
no, I agree. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. No, I know.
I'm like, okay, we can do this.
Too. Go ahead.
But I'm like, okay, we can do this. You go first.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
Right?
You go first. That's right? Yeah. Could you imagine the first day the politicians go out with no protection? I'll be like,
right. Right.
I don't like.
But they're telling me that it's okay. Like I have to rely on the police, who they also tell me are incompetent and terrible and racist, and we should defund them.
Right.
But you're telling me they're my only security and they're really great and it's okay that I can rely on them. What?
Well, they'd write in a loophole that they could pay private security.
No. If there's no guns, there's no guns, how can private security have guns?
They're not American guns or American security. They're paying foreign security, and they have foreign guns.
Oh yeah, no guns, no guns. No guns means.
See how that loophole works for them?
On the upside, we'd get the border sealed off, though.
Oh, that's true. I'll bet.
Right, because you have to seal the border in order to prevent guns from coming in.
Right. You'd think, but you know how efficient they are.
Yeah, exactly. So this has been a great conversation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Patrick and Paul. I think Patrick is actually really Scott, and John and Ed and Carolyn, excuse me, and Scott over here, someone who I don't know who it is because I cannot read that language. I have no idea. Let's see, who else? If I missed anybody, I'm sorry. Ron, thank you. Everybody, Bill, appreciate all your comments. Thank you so much. And I will put those, the links in down below. Please like the podcast. If you liked it, we would appreciate that. Please give us a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do. We'll be back next Thursday, 7:15. And don't forget tomorrow, 7:15.
Oh, I think Mary just froze. All right.
Did I freeze?
We'll definitely be back.
I'm not frozen. I'm not frozen. James just froze. Anyway. I'm on 7:15 tomorrow. James just froze, so I don't think it's me. I think it's James. 7:15 tomorrow, Sean Spicer on Newsmax. Please join me. And I will also be Monday on Newsmax on the Chris Salcedo show at 5:45. I'm there every Monday with Michael Reagan. So we'll see you then. Have a fantastic, even though it is Memorial Day. And all next week, I am filling in for Rob Carson on Newsmax Radio from noon to 3, and you can listen on WBAL in Baltimore. So that's the home station for his show. So you can listen there too. And of course, I'll tweet that out and put all that information out. So I'm very, very busy coming up. So thank you so much. Oh, 6:30. What did I say, honey? Oh, 7:15 is the podcast. 6:30 on Sean Spicer's show. 5:45 on Chris Salcedo's show. So tomorrow, 6:30 to 7 on Sean Spicer's show. Sorry. Have a wonderful, wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Thank you to everyone who has served, and thank you to everyone who gave their life for this country. That is what we should be remembering on Memorial Day. If you ever get a chance, go to Arlington National Cemetery on Memorial Day. It is life-changing. So let me just get this ready to go here. Thank you again so much, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend. Bye.